Today we're here to talk about platforms and platform as a product. So let's begin with a question first of all. Have you ever made something or bought something for a friend, hoping for the best, but when you hand it over, it's not well received? And that feeling of disappointment that you've put all this effort in and all your efforts have been wasted. Well, today we're going to try and bring that back to the conversation around IT and what that means when we build platforms in our enterprises and our developers don't show that gratitude that we're hoping for. So it's going to be a talk that doesn't really include any technology, so thankfully I don't have to worry about getting myself in trouble too much. But I would say if you're interested in platforms in terms of what you want to build, I would certainly say this week's a great opportunity to look at Tanzu Application Platform and Tanzu Application Service. I say today is going to be about how we go about building rather than what we build. So who am I? My name is Bryan Ross, as you can guess from the slides. I work in a department called the Tanzu Value Advisory, and our job is to work with some of VMware's biggest and most interesting customers. In fact, some of you are in the room today, which is good. I get the opportunity to work with execs trying to work out how we deliver value from the technology. So again, you can put as much technology in as you like, but how do we really tie that back to business value and get some movement, get some traction out of it, and try and balance off the spend that we have. Prior to Sky, prior to VMware, I was at a large media company called Sky. This is very big in the UK. I was there for 10 years and I built platforms. So that was based on vSphere technologies. So we're looking at ARIA, looking at Cloud Foundry, looking at Kubernetes, and many others as well. So I've been doing this for quite some time, and again, that's kind of what my team's all about. We're all industry veterans, we've all had senior leadership roles, so we know what this looks like in the real world. Today as well, I'm joined by Mark from CBS. I don't know if you caught his session yesterday, but he's been out there in the real world, building platforms and trying to get developers to really embrace them and use them. And I can't stress this enough, is that how do you go about building a community around what it is you're doing and getting them engaged and switched on? Because I think if we can build that partnership, it's a lot more powerful. So let's think about what's happening in IT and why we need to look at it. So what is a platform, first of all, and why do you want to do that? So I'm sure you're all the same. What we've seen is a switch from traditional businesses and traditional operation style IT, where if you want anything done, you raise a ticket, that ticket bounces across different departments, and then eventually something pops out the other end and your user gets a notification. Well, I think we can all say those days have changed. Expectations have changed. Now in the age where we've got all the technology in our pockets, our developers want self-service. We want things to be fast. We want things to be automated. We want digital journeys. And we should recognize this, right? These are things that we look for in our own lives. If you have a problem with your mobile phone contract, you're hoping that you can deal with that online. You don't want to wait in a queue for 20 minutes to speak to an operator, okay? And that's the same thing that I've seen as well, and I think that was the most interesting part of my previous role, was watching that change happen and how we respond to that. So what is it we're trying to achieve with platforms? So if I think back 5+ years, what I generally see amongst my other customers as well is the traditional IT approach where you have a project mindset. So you are building things usually off the back of a large funded project internally. That means that usually you're now on the critical path to deliver that. You've also probably been engaged at the tail end. So you weren't involved in the business case, you've just been asked to build this infrastructure out, but they most definitely need it tomorrow because they're running behind schedule, and you're now on the critical path. We see that, as I said, it's this barrage of tickets. We always use the phrase, it takes a village. That's not always a good thing, right? And of course, when something goes wrong and you try to get support, it's normally into the queue, and then you wait a couple of days for a response, and then your ticket might get closed, and it just feels all a little bit inhumane. Where we're trying to get to is different. With a platform, we're trying to build something in advance. We want to be part of the planning process for projects to understand what's going to be in the pipeline, so we can have that ready when projects arrive, centrally funded, of course, rather than being project funded. And then we think about how we're going to build it. It's automated, it's self-service, it's fast, it's quick. And then I think the most important part is that when things do go wrong and people need help with that platform, then how do we make that experience more human? How do we respond in ways that are best suited for the types of tickets? So of course, I'm not saying we can get rid of our ticketing systems for production, but certainly if someone has a quick question about how to get the best out of a platform, maybe that's not the best way. You know, you maybe a Slack or Teams, something chat-based. So what about the product part then? If a platform is what we're looking to build, a product is how we want to build it. There's many different parts of building a product, and I think the healthiest way to look at it is, if you were a company, how would you position yourself? So the first thing you need to work out is who your users are. You'll need to think about how you're going to sell whatever capability it is you have. Because just like an IT department, we're capable of many things, right? But what is it we're actually selling? We can't just go off and open our arms and say we can do everything. We want to try and make that easier to consume. We need to think about the onboarding journey. How do we get people involved in our products and excited about how to use them? It might be that we have to cater to different levels of experience. And we follow this wheel all the way around towards customer support and how we handle problems that go bump in the night. And again, how do we change the expectation from developers about the level of service they can get? So these are the types of things that we need to be thinking about. And I spend a lot of my time talking with customers about how to best implement those. And what I want to do today was bring just a few of them to you to focus on. And these are the four. So I think the big standout here is the word customer. And I use that very purposely. So in most businesses, we think about our colleagues, we think about users. But when I'm building platform teams and I'm trying to deliver something as a product, I think we should be thinking of our users as customers. Because if we are this little business running inside a bigger business, then those are our customers, right? They are the ones that we're trying to provide some level of service to. And that subtly changes how we think about things. So these are different sets of skills, and I think engineers particularly have a habit of wanting to look at the technology, but it's really important that we look at these things as well. So how does that look in the real world? And I think I did a podcast with Michael Cote from VMware, and it was interesting. We were chatting about that in real life, and I was reminded of what it's like in retail, and that's an industry where I think they have mastered the art of customer service. So if you can imagine going to the shops and you want to buy some flour. You turn up and the first thing that is there is someone in uniform there to greet you. You know what to expect from that store. You know what it is they sell, okay? And then you stroll up and you don't know where the flour is, so you find someone. And there's people there, there's staff there in nice colored t-shirts to help you with whatever you need. So someone approaches you, you tell them you're looking for some flour, and rather than just pointing you at, it's aisle 4 down there, instead they'll guide you. They'll say, well, follow me, I'll show you where it is. And while they're walking you to the aisle where all the flour is and the other baking supplies, they'll be talking to you about what it is you want flour for, perhaps. You explain it's for a birthday. That's great. That means by the time you get to the aisle and you see this wall of different types of flour for different types of uses, they already have an idea of what you want. Now, it's different flours for that particular purpose at different price points, so they'll maybe talk you through that. And then in the end, as you're walking towards the checkout, they maybe say, well, it was for your daughter's birthday. That's fantastic. Do you have candles as well once you've made this cake? Oh, no. Well, let me show you those as well. Now, if we think about that in terms of what it might look like for developers trying to consume a platform, it's a really different experience, right? Can you imagine a retail outlet that was run like an IT operations center, where you turn up and there's nobody there to help? And so there's just an automated ticketing system where you type in what you're looking for, flour, you hit return. And then you're told that someone will get back to you in 2 to 3 days possibly, right? You're going to go somewhere else. And I think that's what we're seeing in IT as well. We need to think about what the experience looks like for developers, because if we can't provide something that works really well for them, they are going to go somewhere else. Now that might look like public cloud, that might look like shadow IT, but they'll find something. The path of least resistance is really, really strong. So what can we do about it? Well, let's have a think about marketing. The first thing with marketing, I think, is that what we're trying to work out is how do we succinctly describe what it is we're selling. And on face value, that seems really easy to do, but in practice, I've talked to a number of execs that really struggle to describe that. And that's because we're so busy focused on trying to get things built that we don't think about what it is we're trying to do and why someone might want to use that. So I think having a really simple definition of what it is you're doing and what problem you're trying to solve in the world is the first part of building any platform. Understand your why. I'm famous now for going to customers and asking, are you using Kubernetes? And they say yes, and I say, great, why? Or I go to customers and I say, are you using Kubernetes? And they say no, and I say, great, why? Right? We need to understand what it is they're trying to do with business. The other part is around how we go about branding what it is we're doing. And we never really think about that. You know, I think sometimes we talk about the teams that we've got in an organization, but it's useful to think about how we can brand what it is we're doing. First of all, it makes it really easy for execs and finance to talk about that thing rather than that team. So if you have a platform, it has a name, it has a logo, all of a sudden you can talk about this rather than thinking about the them, okay? And we do that as well, right? When we think about public cloud, we talk about the branding of the products we're using. So we need to learn some lessons from that. In terms of the measuring for marketing, I think the best advice I would give is think about what it's like for a brand new employee entering your organization. How do they find out what it is you do? So what is it, even finding if you've got a website, that'd be a good start. Like, how do they find your website? Are you linked on the internet? If they search for cloud in that search bar, are they going to find you? How are you going to get landed? And there's various things you can do. I think others include things like getting involved if you have a graduate scheme. You can talk to the people organizing that to make sure that as part of the graduation and into the business, these young people have the opportunity to use your platforms. You know, that's a really good way of getting that early engagement. Because not only will they know about it, when they then go into their teams that they're going to work in, they'll take that knowledge with them. And bonus points as well if you give them free accounts so they can use that during their graduate program to try things out, right? Really nice way of getting people involved. Once we've got our customers and they have an idea of what it is we do, we need to think about that onboarding process. Again, we rush into trying to build the platform to do as many things as it can, right? In my experience, that's not been the best way. I think if we think about the companies that we work with, would you rather have a company that offers 1,000 products, but the service is terrible? Like you have to wait for a week to get them, or when you try and get support, you can't get hold of them. Or would you rather consume things from a company where they only do 5 things, but they do them really, really well? Like I can think of a couple of brands that have been very successful in exactly that. They're not necessarily first to market. They're not necessarily offering the best features. They're not necessarily the cheapest, but they're the nicest to use. And I don't think we use that metric enough when we're thinking about IT platforms. So I'd say in terms of onboarding, think about that niceness factor. How do we give someone new to the platform a really early, easy win? Because that's what we want. If they turn up to your platform and it's hard, it's complex, they can't get a simple thing done, they're going to move on and go somewhere else. Likewise, you also need to think about the opposite. Once someone knows how to use your platform, how do you deal with the complex stuff? That needs to be possible. So think about things like knowledge bases, frequently asked questions, sessions to introduce people. Build a community around your product so they can then have user sessions, kind of like we have today at Explore. One of the best things we have is not people like me talking about what we're doing, but the opportunity for us to talk about together what it is we're doing and sharing experiences. And then, of course, there's that element of support. And I can't stress enough the importance of thinking about omni-channel. If you're running a company and you have customers, you're going to do this naturally anyway, okay? You can have a digital journey. That's probably where your company's pushing just now. You should be doing the same on your own platforms. How can I anticipate the problems people are going to have and give them a pathway to solve it? Likewise, if it's a simple query, let's try and deal with that in chat or a phone call. Like, chat is better, because then you have vicarious learning as well. Other people in the community, now you've got this searchable thing that can happen. Also, if you've got people in that channel, so you might end up with 100 or 1,000 developers in there, well, they can help answer the questions on behalf of your staff. So all of a sudden, you don't need to have a huge support organization. And these people, once they've gotten good at your platform and understand it, they begin to see their value as well in that community. So all of a sudden, you have advocates. And that's a really strong thing, right? So in terms of the support, I think omnichannel is important. One of the tricks that I've done in my own organizations is to think about how to respond to people. My general rule when I built my first platform as a product team was, I only want us to reply with URLs. So if someone asks a question in support and we don't have a wiki page for it, go write the wiki page. Doesn't need to be great, but write your answer in the wiki page and then send them that URL. And then the next time that question's asked, now we've got a knowledge base building. Likewise, internally, we've got new graduates to join the team. They're not quite sure how to do X, Y, or Z. Great, write them a how-to and put it in the wiki. And their first job is to follow that wiki page, and if it's not right, well, congratulations, you get the job of updating the wiki page, right? So support, I think it's really important to think about how you do it. I'd also push for asynchronous, rather than things like calls to heroes in your team. I think that's probably the biggest anti-pattern I've seen. So you don't want everyone contacting the one person. You want them to talk to a Slack channel, a Teams channel, a mailbox, but phone calls to individuals and having that kind of hero culture is definitely bad. It may be good in the short term for people, but long term it's going to hurt you. And then finally, roadmap. We're very good at thinking we know what other people want. And this goes back to the very beginning, right? We build something, we buy something, and we give it with the best intentions, but maybe we just didn't understand what people actually wanted. So when you're looking at a roadmap, how do we deliver things that are value driven? Well, we have to talk to our customers. We have to understand what it is they want. Again, if we're a small company, we do market research, right? It's a huge part of the industry. So do your market research, talk to your customers, get them involved in what you're thinking about doing next, get their advice. Also as well, ideally, build things that they need. And that then gives you a springboard, because now you have a customer that you can go to finance with and say, we did this work, we built a minimum viable product, we've got this up and running, and look at the value we're delivering to the business already. Can I please have more money for next year, right? And that's kind of the game we play, right? It's all about trying to get continuous investment. The best way of doing that is not to build something and hope that they come. The best way is to build something small alongside your customers and just really encourage them to sell that story. It'll be worth its weight in gold. The only warning there, I think, is that customers will want something that is quite specific to them. So you need to be a little bit careful and make sure you're always building platform features. The tendency to want to build something quickly for that customer, it's very strong, very appealing. But you need to make sure whatever you build is going to be useful for everybody. You can't just have that one bespoke feature. Because if you fast forward 5 years, you will end up with just this horrible bespoke monster that doesn't really meet anyone's needs, and it's really brittle and it's really hard to update. On that as well, I think that it's really important to make sure you save some time for your platform in itself. You know, you need to be working on your own internal automation. You need to be working on for your own engineers to reduce their toil, to make sure that they're not just constantly developing new things. Sometimes you need to be doing upgrades, refactors, etc. And be transparent. Like all of the things we talk about here in the suggestions are all about offering what it is we're doing back to people and giving them an opportunity to get involved. So I think that's probably enough for me. You know, I say I've done this successfully in businesses that I've worked in, but I've got Mark from CBS. He's had a similar journey. I'd be really interested, Mark, does this resonate to the experiences you've had? Is this, what was your biggest challenge maybe, or can you give a bit of background as well on what CBS were doing?
Yeah, I don't know you saw now. Well, very recognizable, the story, and I think that I like the story about the flower. That's also recognizable. Why? Because well, a couple of years ago we started with a platform We started with Tensor Application Services, Cloud Foundry, instantiated a platform team and thought, well, this is okay, go ahead. But what we saw in one of the pictures is of far more factors involved. So the organization knowledge, culture, processes behind the platform. We still have the ticketing system in place, partly. Yeah, what we saw is that the idea of developers using the platform and having problems, that they can go to someone and not saying, well, it's over there, but take them on a path. What are you doing? Understand it, and show them, well, the platform can help you in this way, and we deliver these services for you. That's something we now after 3 years we are more and more getting to know how to implement these kind of things around the platform and around the platform team. And I think also what important is, we started with a platform. So we chose Cloud Foundry back then, but we had an idea about how to develop software for the future. So we had things like, okay, we need to be more efficient. We were working agile, so platform will help us in the agile way of working. But now we are at a point that we really are thinking about how do we see in the next 5 to 10 years the way of software development in our organization, and how does the culture in the organization fit into that, and how, which tools and which platform can be useful in that, in our idea of software development. And I think that's the other way around than first thinking, so 3-4 years ago, about first getting the platform. That's also a very valuable thing that we learned.
So I'd like to take some questions from everyone here, and I think you've got the benefit of both our experience, but just while you're thinking of those, did you have any challenges with your engineering team in trying to convince them of, the skills that they've learned in university and throughout their careers, both probably been technology based, like how do we do this, how do we version control, infrastructure as code, all these exciting things. Did you have trouble in trying to convince them that actually we need to spend some more time on those human factors too, or were they already kind of convinced that was the way?
Yeah. So one of the things is IT persons are like other persons. If they work for a long time on a certain way, it's hard to change. Change is always hard. It's a culture thing. So most of them was the reaction, well, it works. It works now. Why should I use another platform? It's all difficult. Let me use virtual machines and my tools. I use it now. And I think that in the beginning we didn't have a good story to convince them. Well, if you use the platform and you use some new cool features of it, your work can be better and can be more fun. And I think that story, that's something also that you need to have. You need to develop in combination with your customers of the platform. Because just telling to developers, well, here's the platform, here there are some services, here are the tools, go along, use it. That's not going to work.
I think storytelling is a really interesting part. So questions from the audience. What are the challenges that you're experiencing, or do you have any questions on the content you've seen? Don't be shy. Microphone back there, thanks.
Is this on? Yeah, okay. So Bryan mentioned earlier the building of platforms can take a bit of a focus if you've got one particular business unit that wants a particular requirement. And the question that I've got is, in order to get the platform to be successful, you need to build a level of advocacy through other teams within the business. So it's not an easy challenge necessarily to completely push back on a particular requirement from a particular business unit. But I'm wondering, did you have that challenge at CBS? And if so, how did you come around it, and how did then you build that advocacy through other teams to get them on the platform?
Okay, to recap that I have the question correct. So it's more your question about difficulties about the more from a business perspective to be convinced to use the platform.
It is that, but also when you've got specific lines of business who want a particular requirement from the platform that maybe isn't part of the baseline that you've already built, how do you work through the accommodating of that? Because as Bryan mentioned, you can then sometimes end up in a silo of bespoke features just for one particular line of business. But almost you have to kind of attack those challenges from those teams in order to allow them to build advocacy and bring other teams then into the platform as well. So I'm just wondering if that was a challenge that you guys had and how did you come around it?
Yeah, we still have. So now more and more, now we get more and more traction and more users on the platform. It makes it also more difficult to, so we have one platform now, and so nowadays there's also Kubernetes come along. We have Cloud Foundry, so we have developers in the organization. They say, well, we have very particular requirements, and we want to use stuff that's on Kubernetes. Okay, should we have then two platforms? Or should we build one big platform and supporting all of those different requirements? Or should we say to those teams, yeah, unfortunately we have one platform, use it. But yeah, then we have some people who are not happy. So yeah, we're struggling with that too. Yeah.
I think perhaps one of the things that I've found is the art of saying no. And much like we want to try and be successful for developers and the teams, saying no is sometimes that important piece. So when we're defining the products that we sell, we need to be real clear about what we're doing. Much like if I go into a technology shop trying to buy flour, they would just send me somewhere else, right? So I think, there's going to be a balance in all things, but if what they're trying to build is you can see value in for the rest of the user community, I think it's about partnership, understanding what their real deadlines look like. How can you tell a convincing story together, bearing in mind that everyone wants to demonstrate their success. And specifically as well, they'll have a business value in mind they're trying to get across. So how can you be part of that journey? Or how do you gracefully say, that's a great idea, you should definitely do that, but that's not something we can help with right now. And building that credibility sometimes is important. Or telling that it's not viable in the time that we have available. That just means that as long as you do it nicely, they'll come back later for future. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? So 2 seconds, just got a microphone for you.
You had on the slide there from products to projects and to products. So projects quite often or generally is more of an investment vehicle. What sort of funding models have you seen work well to fund platform teams?
So I think there's 2 ways. Traditionally, you're absolutely right. The projects, because they are a thing delivering some value or revenue back to the business, they will be backed by money. And that's what you need to develop. 2 models. First of all is in the early days, you're probably going to have to work with those projects to help get some of their finance out of their hands so you can build a platform. But I think as well, having a conversation with your finance team and saying, over the last 5 years, we've delivered all these projects, but they all generally ask for the same thing. They want some VMs, they want some containers, or they get something into production. And we're always slow or late in delivering. The reason for that is that there is no pipeline. And so being able to talk about those things in a financial way, I think is a really important step. Eventually, I think where you want to get to is that your platforms have a value. Much like nothing in this world is free if you want to buy something. So working with your finance team to understand the constructs you can use for either a showback or ideally a chargeback method is really important. That way you can use that. Again, think about yourself as a little company. You have money coming in and money going out. You can not necessarily be a profit center, because you'll have a problem with that, but you stop being that cost that needs to be driven down, and you start being a value center that is invested in. But telling that story, I think, is the most valuable part. But you need to talk to finance. Get them involved in what you're doing. It's not just developers, it's security as well, right? You need to demonstrate the value of what you can do if we're not rushing to get things done in a hurry all of a sudden, and we can build things centrally. Like I'm sure you guys all had problems, not so long ago with a certain vulnerability in Java, right? I found that experience for me was a really nice one because I was able to demonstrate the value of a centralized platform. Because the first question that any from the exec is going to ask is, where are we vulnerable? How bad is this? And if you've got 100 different projects all built bespoke individually, it's a really hard question to answer. If you built a single central platform, particularly on TAS or on TAP where you've got Kubernetes, you've got that introspection into all of the applications, you know what's inside them, you have an owner for them all, there's a support team you've engaged with, there's a huge value there. So work with other teams and try and build a financial model for your little mini company. Does that answer the question? Anything else? Okay. Well, look, thank you so much for all your time. I appreciate that, you've probably had a good night last night, hopefully, and you've got another busy day ahead of you today. Look forward to hopefully seeing some of you at the party. Please do take some time to fill out the survey if you can. If you enjoyed the presentation, then it's great to get that feedback. Likewise, if you did not enjoy the presentation, I can only apologize, but it's great to get that feedback too. Have a great day. Thank you so much. Cheers.